front, including pictures of the Apaches in action against Iraqi positions.
It is the largest helicopter assault of its type ever mounted. By tonight, if all goes well, they'll have set up a huge forward base deep inside Iraq, a fortified fuel station for the helicopters, complete with field hospital and supplies. From this bridgehead, codenamed Cobra, 4,000 airborne troops will launch attacks into the Euphrates River Valley, south of Baghdad itself. The airborne assault, coupled with massive land attacks, is aimed at isolating Saddam's key units of the Republican Guard, now entrenched outside the southern Iraqi city of Basra. Over 100 helicopters are now poised to try and cut off the Republican Guard from either retreat or advance. But as Allied armor moved forward in support, the latest intelligence suggested the Republican Guard were by no means finished. Coalition pilots had seen some 80 Iraqi tanks moving south across the battlefield towards the advancing front line of Desert Storm. The relentless artillery and air bombardment has clearly flushed Saddam's much-vaunted army from its bunkers. If the Republican Guard has emerged from hiding for one last defiant stand, the battle ahead could still be bloody and brutal. But along much of the front line, the Allied battle force is well ahead of schedule. The advance now accelerating. On the eastern flank, the small Kuwaiti army, back on its own soil for the first time in nearly 7 months. Today is Kuwait's Independence Day. The exiled force is determined that it should go down in history.
Our country is freedom, okay? And we thank all the friends to help us. Thank you.
Although the Kuwaitis are now almost within sight of their capital city, liberation could still be some days away. Far to the west, French and American armored columns led a high-speed attack, thrusting up to 100 miles into Iraq. The eventual aim to hold the Baghdad-Basra road, outflanking the Republican Guard. In the desert between them, other units were preparing to meet the Iraqi tanks head-on.
Advance across the desert on the second day of the Allied ground offensive to liberate Kuwait. Tanks and armored personnel carriers, which crashed their way through Saddam's defenses on the Kuwaiti border yesterday, continued to push forward.
An Iraqi T-72 tank knocked out on the road to Kuwait City, perhaps 20 or 30 miles further on. On both sides of the road, the Saudi army waits in the desert for the next, possibly the final push.
An American reconnaissance team examined Iraqi bunkers on the outskirts of a small town on the coast, 20 miles north of the border. They spotted 6 abandoned recoilless rifles and fired sniper rounds into the bunkers to see if they were occupied. But 1 or 2 Iraqi shells did fall among the serried ranks of Saudi armored vehicles. Then in mid-morning, the tanks rolled north again, only to be halted when they encountered some accurate Iraqi artillery fire.
The Saudi advance towards Kuwait City is temporarily stalled here. While they wait, the heavy artillery and the multi-barreled rocket launchers are putting down suppressive fire on Iraqi positions up ahead.
The artillery duel got hotter. Shells were falling uncomfortably close now among the Saudi tanks and personnel carriers, forcing them to make a minor tactical withdrawal. For the time being, the ground offensive in this particular area was stalled. Then they brought up the heavy stuff, the multiple-barreled rocket launchers that can put down a lethal barrage of tons of high explosive in a few seconds. The battle goes on.
50,000-strong Republican Guard force have remained dug in near Basra in southern Iraq under intense Allied bombardment. Now they're on the move. Reports from US pilots suggest tanks are heading south, perhaps to counter the Allied advance through Iraq, alternatively to take on coalition forces in central Kuwait. The decision to move will expose the Iraqis to further air attacks from Apache gunships. well ahead of the ground confrontation, thought to be just a few hours away. As the opposition grows tougher, Allied commanders have been giving more details of the successes achieved so far. They say over 18,000 Iraqis, EPWs in military jargon, have now been captured.
Marine and Army forces have reported the capture of 20 T-62 tanks, 40 APCs, and over 400 EPWs. In another incident, 50 Tu-62 tanks are parked within 4 kilometers of their position, with the Iraqi crews indicating their desire to surrender.
They pulled up to the, looks like just short of the flame trenches.
Coalition troops have been surprised by the ease with which they crossed border defences. Obstacles like this burning oil proved easy to deal with. But intelligence on morale among frontline Iraqis appears to have been correct.
Necessary thing on any army is the morale. The morale is not good. Yeah.
The Saudis have stressed again today that all Iraqi prisoners will be treated in accordance with Islamic tradition and with the Geneva Conventions. Some of these Iraqis captured and searched by Saudi troops seemed to have little more than broken biscuits to eat and scrambled eagerly for what spare food and drink the combat unit was carrying. But there's no overconfidence among the advancing Allies. Ahead lies Kuwait City, heavily defended and with all the perils of street fighting. The toughest battles are yet to come.
The 2 armoured brigades, but also the divisional support, has today been on the move into Iraq. Among the armour we saw today were the Challenger tanks that will replace those destroyed in battle. The convoys have been streaming north past the Iraqi border. British commanders now seeking to take advantage of the rapid progress made by other coalition forces over the last 24 hours. Tonight, it seems likely that the first British engagement with Iraqi forces will occur shortly. During the day, both British brigades, the 4th and the 7th, have, with the help of American forces, passed through Iraqi defences. Because of reporting restrictions facing correspondents near the front line, I am unable to give any further details about the nature of the battle that lies ahead. But I can confirm that British forces are now deep inside Iraqi territory, and that so far there have been no British casualties.